All right, we're all set. We've done this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, we wrote it down.
This is where we'd start. So go ahead and start.
There's one dash on the one before that.
Oh, okay.
You back up one. But we didn't talk about that, but of course we know proliferation, what that means.
Yep. Yeah. So grows continuously by rapid proliferation. All right. So just make sure we wrote that down. All right, growth of hair. Hair shaft is pushed upward. New cells are carried away from their source and nourishment and die, turning it into what we know as keratin. It's much like skin cells. The top layer of your skin is dead, and it just acts as, well, hair acts as for warmth, for protection against water, or even like thick, dense hair will protect against predators or even camouflage. But what I'm getting at is that hair is not alive, it's dead. It's just attached to the living cells as it comes out. So the living cells are at the very base, they get pushed out, they die, and they remain as dead cells until the hair itself falls out or the hair follicle breaks. The underhair is what traps the heat. It's sometimes so dense that not all mammals, of course, we don't have hair dense enough where we have waterproof skin, but if you think of like a seal or I'm trying to think of water mammals, platypus, they don't get wet. Their skin does not get wet. Why do you think that's important? What's that? Why do you think it's important that they don't get wet? Yeah. So they can maintain body heat because water sucks all the heat out of you, out of animals. So it's important that they don't get wet. So I'm going to go back one. I forgot to mention this one. So we're talking about specific types of hair. This is under hair, right? So now on this slide, we're talking about guard hair, which is the hair on top of the under hair, like you can read. And this one is the one we see. So this is the most notable hair that we're or fur, think of an animal. And it gives protection, like stated previously. It covers the under hair, and it provides coloration. Why would coloration be important for the overcoat to have? Yeah, absolutely. So think of a tiger. Tigers are orange. Why does it not matter that tigers are orange? We can see tigers super clearly, but yeah, other animals can't see orange. So if the green and the orange are the same color to them, are nearly the same. Have you ever seen a picture of a tiger like hidden in the grass and it's using the vision that an animal would see? I don't know what.
Living with tigers.
Oh yeah, do they have that in there? It's impossible to see. They're crazy hidden. Same thing with zebras. They're black and white, but the way their stripes are, you know how they have like vertical stripes on their sides? It breaks them up when they're standing. Like if I'm standing on a tree line, if I were a zebra, and I had those lines, it breaks it up. So now I'm no longer one solid mass, one silhouette. I'm like just a bunch of different stripes. It's much harder to tell. In World War I or II, I can't remember when they first adopted it, they painted their ships the same color. So on the horizon, it would be much harder to identify that that's a ship rather than that's just a couple of specks. So it breaks up the outline of an animal. And a lot of modern camos that they use today, specifically for hunting, they use this same sort of idea where they have large stripes that run through them to break up a hunter's silhouette if they're sitting in some trees. That's why you'd think, so there's two theories on this, but you'd think that the camo that looks exactly like trees, you know, it looks like branches and stuff, it's just a picture put on there, would be the most effective. But it really is important, because if you go, say, that works for trees, and then you go into a marsh, then it's not going to work. But if you have just like a large stripes across your body, basically, a broken silhouette, then it's really the most versatile and effective camo. And then identification as well. You can think of like a white-tailed deer or a skunk, very notable markers on the deer. Why do white-tailed deer get their name? They got white tails. Hey, look at that. Yeah. Makes it really easy for us to tell. Same with a black-tailed deer. Guess what color that is? Yeah, it's black. Yeah, good. So yeah, it's we can identify animals using their fur patterns, especially animals that look awfully similar to each other. Yeah, so color, so color and shedding go hand in hand on this slide, because we're talking about animals that shed to change color, really. The first one, foxes and seals, coats are shed once a year, so this is not really a color change. If it sheds once a year, then they're not changing color because they remain that color the entire year. It takes place during the summer months. Why would it be important that it takes place specifically during those summer months? It's warmer. Yeah, they don't need the fur. They can lose their last fur and not be vulnerable to cooling. Weasels and Arctic animals, such as the Arctic hare, they shed twice a year. Why would that be? Don't read the bottom line. Why do you think they shed twice a year? Yeah. Yeah. So in the summer, the Arctic hare or rabbit, I think it's hare, right? Hare? Sure. The Arctic hare is brown in the summer to match the foliage around it. Whereas the Arctic, in the winter, it sheds, so come August or September, it starts shedding that brown coat, and now it gets a white coat, so it matches the snow. It makes it much more camouflaged from birds. And it can't do, it's not one of those animals. We'll go back to birds real quick. Why is it important? If an animal is very susceptible to bird attacks, why is it important that for them not to be orange in not to look like a tiger? Why do you think animals prey animals of birds can't have crazy colors and still be camouflaged? Does anybody know? We didn't talk about it, but I'm just curious if you knew. It's because birds can see color. Yeah, so birds can see color. So it's important for the camouflage to be very close in the foliage around them. So, all right. So here's another modification of hair, and it's viraceae, I think. This provides a tactile sense of touch for senses. What would we call them? You guys know what we're talking about? We're talking about a tactile touch for senses. Think of cats. Cats is a good one. Reflexes, yep, but think of a hair. What? Whiskers, yeah. Yeah, it's their whiskers. And this allows them, what animals do you think would have the most use for whiskers or have like the longest whiskers or the best? There's this, like daytime animals or nighttime animals? Nighttime, yeah. Yeah, so they're able to sense things around them so they don't run into things. I think that's the main one. Maybe they have some other uses for them. But yeah, they you hit that little hair and it makes it like, especially our lips, even though we don't have whiskers, are very sensitive. So if you imagine we had a whisker, if you hit it way out here, it'd be like sending you a message like, hey, something's coming. It's like putting your hands out in the dark. And then armor. Porcupines, hedgehogs, and then echidnas. Oh, that's it, enchillas. Echidnas, they have quills. Yeah, it's modified hair that's very thick, and it's able to puncture animal skin. Have you ever seen a picture of like, I don't know, a dog or a cheetah or something that tries to get a hold of a porcupine? Got a bunch of quills sticking out of it. Yeah, so they're not fun. They say they can shoot. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think that's true. I just read something where they shoot them at animals, but I don't know if that's entirely true. Couldn't tell you. But they break off when they're hit, so they stay in the animal, because if they just poke through and then went out, it wouldn't be as painful, but it leaves a note for them. Anyway, yeah.
It's really smart. You can remember the armadillo. Yes, it's got armor, but there's something special about its vertebral column. Oh shoot, they saw me do that.
Hey. Yep. There you go. I don't know if that's it.
The lower back then.
So lumbar. Yep. Someone had to be right. Are there shells modified skin? Is that what that is?
We would have to.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. But yeah. Oh, anyway, a continuation of last slide. They have backwards pointing hooks on the tips, like a fishing hook, if you can imagine. And it works deep into the tissue, and then once that animal jolts away, when it feels that spine, it's already stuck, and so it stays in and breaks off, much like a bee sting. So you know how bee stingers have a bunch of hooks on their sides. It's like a harpoon almost. So when a bee stings you, it pulls away and it pulls that entire venom sac out of the bee. But wasps don't have that. Did you know that? So they can sting you multiple times, whereas bees can sting you once and then they die. Yep. Unless you're that one bee in the Bee movie. All right, moving on to horns.
We're talking about this in biology, and I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. Yes, we refer to these as the ruminants, and for anyone who's taken a senior level ag class, or maybe not necessarily, we're talking about cattle, we know that there's 4 chambers. That doesn't answer the question, why are cattle chewing their cut? And this is hours after they digest it. I think it's just to get all the available nutrients in that bolus. I think that's the proper term for that. It's just not small enough to pass into the next chamber, so that's why they gotta regurgitate. I don't know if that's correct or not.
That makes sense to me.
That's my presumption of that.
I think grass is pretty low calorie, so
So
they want of it. Yeah, they need to really work it. So ruminants, yep, cows and sheep. Yeah, they are the cud chewers. They have sheaths of keratinized epidermis surrounding a hollow core of bone arising from the skull. So we call those what? What do we call those? Anybody know? Horns. Yeah, super simple. I wasn't looking for anything crazy. Horns. And the horns do not shed. They do not branch, but may be curved. So there's true horns, false horns, I'm guessing, and then antlers. 3 types. True horns don't shed. I'm not sure if a Dall sheep has true horns or not, because they have growth rings on their horns. So every year they have a new growth. And if you ever shoot, this is very rare, but if you were to hunt in the Denali Range in Alaska, you'd have to count 8 growth rings, or if the horn made an entire circle, like an entire 360, so from the base to the tip made a 360, then you'd be able to shoot it. But if it was younger than that, then you wouldn't. And that means it's 7 years old. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So there's growth rings on Dall sheep. I don't know about cows. I'm not a cow guy. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But now we're talking about antlers. No? All right. Antlers, the coolest of all horns. That's not true. I'm biased. It occurs within the deer family, or cervids. Solid bone when mature, fully developed just before the breeding season. Why the breeding season? What do they use them for? Think of a white-tailed deer, moose, elk. Yeah, fighting other males for dominance. And then vessels will constrict once the breeding season's over, and will break off after the breeding season. And so they actually have, before that, they grow on what's velvet. Maybe you've heard of it or not, where they have a velvety covering over this while the bone matures. And it's quite sensitive, I've heard, that those antlers are. Yep, and they shed every year. it's a very popular activity for people to go out and look for those deer antlers. They're lying around. They're called sheds. But some people argue that that's not a good thing because then you're taking calcium out of the environment because the mice eat the calcium and then they defecate, leaving the calcium deposits. I don't know. It's a whole nutrient cycle. But some people collect them. I'm some people. Is it? Yeah, we'll probably stop there. That seems like a good place to stop. Is this? We don't have this out either. Don't no written down. Oh, antlers will fall off after the breeding season. They'll grow larger through each progressive breeding season. So yeah, the older, more mature bucks in a population will have the largest antler set. And it also has to do with genetics. Genetics are a big thing to do with that. But as a common, I don't know what you say, but like as a common rule, the older deer have the largest racks. But if you think of pronghorn antelope, I don't know if you talk about this. They have, you know how they have horns, they're called? I don't think they're actually called antlers, but they're horns and look awful like a cow. They shed too. So they shed every year. But they do not last as long. They last for about one season. You can find a deer shed that's 10 years old if it hasn't been eaten up by mice yet. But a pronghorn would be much less. It has much less time in there. It falls right away because it's more like a cow's antler, cow's horn, than a deer's. Pronghorn have horns, not antlers. I had one more thing about that. Oh, it's not really about horns anymore, but do you know, so antelope are like the fastest animals in America by like 30 miles an hour. That's not true, probably about 15 miles an hour. Do you know why that is? Why would evolution have a pronghorn that is 15 miles an hour faster than anything else? Do you have any idea? Well, it comes from what used to hunt them. So think of what used to be around in the Ice Age, during the Ice Ages. Saber-toothed cats, big wolves, I don't know what else, short-nosed bears. Very large, fast predators were around, and these pronghorn had to be a lot faster than them. But since those have died off and pronghorns still are around, they just have that trait of being ridiculously fast. And they also don't jump over fences for no reason. I don't know. But, all right, I think, yeah, that was more of a fun fact. We'll stop there. It's a good place to stop. We will see you Monday.